Hi and welcome to Matchmove for Production by VFX Tutors. I'm Josh and in this video we'll be moving on to shot MM007. What we will do first is just play through the shot so we can see what we're going to track, then we'll open 3DEqualizer. So we've opened up 3DEqualizer. As you can see, our user interface is set to basic. We have all the windows we need to complete the shot. If you don't see this, you might see something like this if this is the first time you've opened it. So what we'll do, we'll go to environments and click on basic, and this will give us all the basic user interface for all the windows that we'll need to complete the shot. So our first thing we need to do is load in our image sequence. So we've downloaded the data package so you can follow this step by step. Not only is it really useful for you to be able to follow in the production pipeline, but it's also a massive advantage to you to creating a Matchmove reel. And say if you wanted to use this for any other circumstances for your reel, you'll have all the data to put your CG assets in nicely without having for you to go out and get your own data. It's all there for you to use. Okay, so first of all we'll select our camera and it'll be highlighted in yellow for being our active camera. And if we go to live action footage, if you're not seeing this, we could be in a different tab, so make sure you're in camera and click on browse. So now what we want to do, we want to go to your data package, MM007, the cave creature. If we go to plates, go on cave creature, and if it opens up like this, we need to select our sequence view. And as you can see, it's quite a short one compared to our other ones, it's only just under 200 frames. So we'll click OK. And you can see, super dark, can't really see much because we're in a linear color space. It's quite a dark shot anyway. But if we go to our 8-bit color conversion and change our gamma to 2.2, it will read in the correct color space for us. So if we press spacebar, we can't play through it because we need to cache out our buffer compression files. So we need to cache out this image so we can play through it. So first of all, what we're going to do, if we go 3D4 at the bottom left and save our project. So what I'll do, I'll go into here and I'll make a new directory up here. And I'll just call it tutorial. What I'll do, I'll call this the same name as the image sequence. So I know that this file belongs to this sequence. Video 1. Click OK. Now what we want to do, if we go to playback, export our buffer compression file, and this could take a while, so I'll fast forward through this. Cool, so now that's exported, next thing we want to do is import that in. It should be a lot quicker. So now if we click full frame, press spacebar, we can sort of see our camera movement. It's quite short. Cool, so we've got that loaded in. So what we want to do now is set up our lens. So if you go to your data package and go into the camera data folder, you should have a notepad with some of the camera data on, like this. So all we're getting now is just the type of camera and what lens, and we're going to now figure out what focal length that we're using throughout. So if we go to our lens tab, so we want our sensor size to be the same as our film back height, so always use this value, then keep the other one as passive. So if you go to your lens, then go to your film back height, and if you type in 11.88, and you need to make sure you put millimeter in there, so it can, because if you don't, it will read it as 11 centimeters. We don't know what the focal length is for this, so we'll leave it as it is. So now our next step will be to load in our geometry. So if we go to our point group at the top left, click on the little arrow, it should drop down these 4 choices, and if you right click on 3D models and add new, import your OBJ file, And if you go to the data folder, go to set geo, just go to set geo again, and you should have cave creature scan obj. If you click OK, it might take a while because it's a scan. Cool, so that's loaded in. So now if we press F5, we see we've got quite a dense scan in here at the moment. So what we want to do, if we go to 3D model, select our 3D model, cave creature scan, and make sure we check is reference only. And you notice that when we move, it only shows the points because it's got performance rendering on. So if we turn that off, it can get quite annoying. And if we reduce our alpha, so it's a little bit more opaque. So what we can do, we can click here, center models, and it'll push everything, push the camera away from the model. So now what we want to do, if we reduce our alpha even more so we can see a bit more of the plate, if we hold shift and left click, and we want to rotate this around so we got a sort of a correct orientation, and we'll do like a quick manual lineup. So holding shift and middle mouse click, so pull that so we can sort of get the correct orientation. Shift and left click to rotate, shift and right click to scale. So we'll try and get it roughly lined up so we can project our points. Turn it off. I think that's pretty reasonable. So what we'll do, if we click on our texture mapping UV map, and if you go to your texture, you go cave creature scan TIFF, click OK. So now you need to turn off show lines and click on show polygons. And now you can see we've now got the textured scan in our face. So now we can start serving it. So if we go back to F2, in fact, if we just have a look at F5, we can see what bits we can use. We've got quite a bit on the floor, and these rocks are pretty good, but it's so dark. I think really the scan didn't really hold out that well. So we've got quite a lot of detail here. So if we just go to F2, we can start picking out points. White splodge that are quite identifiable on the scan. Pick some rocks down here. Some of it might have moved, but what we'll do, we'll just go around. We'll pick a range of stuff that we know. If we go back to F5, if you're unsure what's in the scan, we can flip between it and just. So we've got some stuff on this rock. We've got the tip of this black sludgy part. Got this tip of the corner here. So we've got F5. We can get this bit here. So if we select our first point and go to F5, we can click extract polygon, select that, and that will line us up for that. So now we're going to do these for every single point. So this is on this edge here. So if we click extract polygon, select that, go to our third point, which is this little rock down here at the base. Which is quite difficult to figure out what's what, so what we'll do, we'll move this to this black splodge here, go to F5 because we can kind of see it here. Extract a polygon there. If we go to 4, we're looking for this little splodge on the rock. Okay, extract polygon. We'll go through and do this for every single one. So extract polygon. That's on that rock there. So see, it's already starting to be in the correct place. Quite hard to tell where that bit is, so what we'll do, we'll move that as well. Do this white patch here, because we can see that quite clearly. We'll extract a polygon onto that, and now we'll select the 8th. And we're pretty close already, so if we extract polygon, select that. So if we press Alt-C, and if we click between our 3D models, you know, we're pretty close. You know, we'll let's put one more up here. Just for good luck. Press F5. Check on our model. We'll extract that polygon there. We'll just solve that with Alt-C. Some rocks on the ground which might help. Looks like a lot of it may have moved. Let's try this rock here. So go to F2 and create another point. F5, 3D model. And if we go extract polygon. Alt-C to solve. So what we'll do, we're pretty close with a 30mm lens, but what we'll do, we'll still adjust the lens, because it may not be exactly, it might be just above or just below. So we'll go to lens, focal length, and make sure we select it to adjust. So now we want to go to our Windows tab down here and go up to parameter adjustment window. We want to change this to adaptive. Click adjust, and it's adjusted very slightly, but that'll make a massive amount of difference. So now if we turn our 3D model off and on, it's pretty much lined up perfectly. So we've got an idea of what focal length our camera's shot at. So what we'll do, we'll bring in that lens grid for the 30mm. So if we go up to our top left where it says cave creature, right click and add new reference camera. And it will make a reference camera under here. So if you double click on that, you want to activate it. Double click's not working. If double click's not working for some reason, we can right click and set current count, how much has been being slow. Okay, so we're now in our active camera because it's highlighted yellow. And if we go to browse, in our live action footage, we want to go to our lens grid folder. And what we can do, we can select the Sigma 30mm lens grid. Click OK. I want to make sure we go to the F3 menu, because that's our distortion menu. And we should have the distortion matrix in the middle. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick this top left one, click and drag, click and hold on this top left point, and pick to a corner where the zebra line appears and let go, so it snaps. And do the same to the top right, and do the same to the bottom left. Then once you've got 3, because the lens grid's quite clear, if you click snap, it'll snap all the points to the correct corresponding corners. So now what we need to do, we need to completely fill out this lens grid. And you might notice there's probably not really that much distortion. This is so minor, that's probably why it's lined up quite well without it. But we'll still add it anyway. So if we hold Control and press up, keep pressing up, and that'll create more rows to our central column. And press Control down, and that's making more to the bottom. So if we hold Control left, and that will make more columns to our left. But we want to completely fill this lens grid, so we get the best calculation for our distortion. If you go over by accident, it's not a problem because it automatically disables it when it's grayed out. But if you want to delete it, you can hold shift and press right. So with our distortion grid, this is pretty much all we need to do. So if we go to calculate or calc at the top and calc distortion and camera geometry, we don't need to change anything in here. All we need to do is click calc lens parameters. Then we should have a nice low deviation pixel value. It means it's got quite a nice good solve. And if we set our parameters and close, if you click between your undistort, you can see it has actually undistorted it quite a bit. So now we're done with this, we want to go back to our sequence camera. So if we double click on Cave Creature Sequence Camera, we can see that it's adding our distortion. So if we go back to our F5 and we press Alt-C and solve, we go between our 3D model, we can see that's lined up pretty much perfectly. So we don't really need this texture on here anymore, so what we'll do, we'll select our scan, and we'll turn show lines on, and then we'll turn show polygons off. If it helps, we can reduce it quite a bit. So the next thing we want to do is we want to store the pose. So that'll make a keyframe here of where our camera's position is. But now we also want to tidy these points up, because we don't want these on when we're doing our tracking, because these will cause havoc with the rest of our tracks. So if we select the top one and the bottom one, and if we right click and add new point set, if we just call this point set SF for single frame, then select all of them by shift and left clicking them all, and click your middle mouse roller and drag it under the SF folder. So now what we need to make sure these are disabled. So right click, modify, calculation, disabled, and we don't want to see them anymore. So if you go view, hide selected points. So now we can minimize that group, and we can go to F2. We go back to the first frame, and we can start adding tracking points. So with Control left click, you can add a new tracking point, then go click gauge marker and track. And I tend to always go from the first and work backwards, so then I'll go pick something down here, one of these rocks, gauge marker and track. Control left click, make a new tracking marker, gauge marker, and track. You need to make sure we get a good spread so it works quite well. Go gauge marker and track. Pick something up here. Gauge marker and track. Get some more bits here. So we can keep going from F5 to check that. If we go back to check what things we can track, so we can track stuff on this rock here. Okay, just track some stuff up here on the left. Here. great point to track, so we'll actually check this here. Or not. So let's actually. So go to our frame, see what else we can track. So we've got this point down here, that could be quite good. Control left click to make a new point. Gauge marker and track. Cool. So we select our points. We've got a fairly alright spread of tracks. They're kind of a bit. Let's just see how it goes, because we've got a fairly decent spread. We've got nothing up here. Nothing really to track. It's quite grainy as well. We can track. So let's try this. Let's track that. With the grainier the footage, it may not track as well. So you can see here on the bar, it's not particularly great. So we'll delete that. Maybe we'll try something down here. Gauge marker track. It's quite grainy, so I think it's going to be quite a jumpy track. But we're not going to survey that anyway. So if we go press F5 and we go to our frame, which we've done our lineup, and now if we select the points that we're going to choose for our projection to project onto our geometry, if we click Edit and project points on 3D models, you see it's only projected 3 of 6. So if we zoom in again and project points on 3D models, that's done 5 of 6. We'll find that last one that's not projected. So we go Edit, project points on 3D model, and that's projected that. So we've got 2 up here that we've not selected. So Edit, project points on 3D models. And now we've projected those. We've got nothing to project onto that, but we'll now what we'll do, we'll press Alt-C to solve the camera. If we use result, we can see we've got something, it kind of looks alright, but the shape of it's not so great. So what we'll do, we want to try and make this as flat as possible. So what we'll do, we'll do a focal length adjustment. So we'll click adjust, and that's not really changed. We'll solve it again. So now if we go to our deviation browser and show point deviation curves, we'll go to active points only, and we'll try and find the ones that are causing us problems. So what we can do is survey free this, then solve it again with Alt-C and see what that gets us. Let's sort of flattened it down. Then what we'll do, if we go to F6, let's just, and if we deselect our model so we can see it, and if we go to where that point is, we can sort of see that it's on the model, but it may have just projected into the wrong place. So it's in the rightest place. So if we zoom in and have a look, in fact, it's also sort of come off here, the lineup. So if we recall the pose, oh no, that is the, so possibly that the mesh is not super tight, but we can see around here where our main focus of where we put our CG asset is pretty good. So we'll check this big spike here and see what that is. So if we go back to our F2 menu, you can see we'll just double check that our point's not doing anything crazy. It's a bit wobbly from the inertia of the camera move, but what we can do, we can go to right click modify. If we approximately survey that and see if that changes our result, and it has. So now what we're going to do, if we go to our camera parameter adjustment again. If we go clear, click adjust. It's a very small amount of change, but it'll make a massive difference. We'll press Alt-C to solve that again. And you can see we've got a pretty flat deviation curve. So if we full frame this, and I press spacebar to play through, we can have a look at see if there's anything crazy going on. You can see all this up here sticking really nicely. The geometry is effectively hugging all the rocks in the plate. All these sort of contours are lining up and it's all sticking. So it looks like this is pretty much done. So quite slow to play through, but yeah, I think that is done. So if we press spacebar, and what you want to do, you want to save it, but if you haven't done it already, just double check that you've checked this reference reference only is checked. So what we'll do, we'll save this, save project as. You can version up. I'm just going to overwrite my file. And so we're pretty much done. The next step is we need to export our camera, and we need to export our Nuke LD node for the compass to reapply the distortion onto the CG at the end. And we also need an undistorted plate so we can work with it in Maya. So first of all, what we'll do, we'll export out a camera. So we'll go to 3D4 on the corner, export project, click on Maya. And we want to make sure that our start frame is the same number as our image sequence start frame. So if we make sure that's 1001, because our image sequence starts at 1001. If we export file, and if we go to our folder that we made for MM007 cave creature sequence, and what we want to do, we want to call this exactly the same name as our shots, so we never get mixed up with what camera is what. Call it cam_VO1. Click OK, and click OK for that, and that's that MEL script exported. So now what we'll do, we'll go to File and Export, and export Nuke LD 3D4 lens distortion node. If you click on that, all we need to do is click on File Name, go to the file that you're saving it in for MM007. We'll call this Cave. Call it the same name as the shot, so we know it's corresponding to that shot. Nuke LD node. So the compass know that's the Nuke LD node. Click OK, and click OK again. So now our next step is to render out our undistorted plate. So what we'll do, we'll go to 3D4 and run warp 4, and it will save, and it will open up this window. So now what we want to do, if we click on warped footage and preview, can't see because it's so dark, but if we save our footage, then we want to leave that as OpenEXR, and if we change our scale to 50% and preview it again, it's just so it's easier for us to see in Maya. It will run a bit more smoother. If we click browse, what we want to do, we want to put this in the same place as all our working files. So I'll make a new folder. UDP at the end for undistorted plate. So if I select all that and right click and copy, click OK. If I right click and paste. So now what I need to do is put, for the end of this, I need to put .4 hashes .exr. And you need to make sure you put this, otherwise it won't render out as an image sequence. So if I click OK, and now that will set up, if you click render, little green bars should start appearing at the bottom, which are rendering out your frames. It could take quite a while, so I'll probably fast forward it. But there should be some green bars appearing now. Cool. Cool, so now that's finally rendered. We can go File, Exit, close it down, and we are done in 3DEqualizer now. So our next step is to go into Maya and set up our camera.
If you guys enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.